Hello everyone, here is Geraldo Lemos Neto from Portal Saber Espiritismo in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. I'm here with Marco Gandra at the back office, and we are here to have the To Know Spiritism program. Today is the 8th program that we are talking about the works of Chico Xavier. We are welcoming everyone from Brazil at Portal Saber Espiritismo and also from DSN, Discovery Spiritism Network in Florida, and also Kardec Radio in Virginia, USA. Thank you so much for being with us. We are very pleased to have you with us. Tonight we are going to talk about the dramatic genre. As you know, in the other programs in the past weeks, we were talking about the literary genres in the works of Chico Xavier. Today we are going to talk about the dramatic genre. Okay, what is the dramatic genre? It is composed of texts that have been written and may well be staged in play form, like in theaters. For the dramatic text to become a play, it must first be turned into a script and then be transformed into a text of the spectacular genre. It is very difficult to have definition of a dramatic text that differentiates it from other textual genres, since there is a current tendency very great in theatrically of any type of text. Every drama is characterized by seriousness or solemnity as opposed to comedy itself. So let's see the dramas that we can see in the dramatic type of works of Chico Xavier. And the next one, the theater plays. We have very nice theater plays in the drama type. As I just said, the dramas that they have a tendency to be great, a tendency to be very serious, the seriousness, or the tendency to be solemn, the solemnity. They are the opposite of the comedy type of plays. Let's see the works here that we can see, that the works from Chico Xavier were books that were staged in the play form. We have the very well-known all over Brazil, the play Além da Vida, Beyond Life. That was the script was done based on Chico Xavier's works, mainly from the spirit of André Luiz, and they were first performed in São Paulo in the 70s, and they were staged all over Brazil in the 80s, the 90s, and even in the 21st century. It is one of the most seen plays from Chico Xavier. We, in the late years, could see also plays from Emmanuel's romances that were scripted and staged in the theaters in Brazil, mostly in Rio de Janeiro, in São Paulo, in Brasília, in Belo Horizonte, in Porto Alegre, in Curitiba, and other, also Salvador, and other Brazilian capitals. There were plays of the book Há 2000 anos, 2000 years ago, There were plays on the subject of the book 50 Years Later, 50 anos depois, and there were plays also in the book Hail Christ, Ave Cristo. And just now I published last the day before yesterday, there is a play that was staged in São Paulo about the book Paul and Stephen. So I would like also to thank our dear friend from the Rio de Janeiro state, from the city of Rio de Janeiro, Kaique Assunção. He himself runs a group of people in the theater that is dedicated to perform, to stage Chico Xavier's work, and he is very devoted to that. So a big hug to you, Kaique, from all of us at Portal Saber Espiritismo. You have a very excellent work. Keep going. Keep the pace. Let's see what we've got. Also, we have also in the works of Chico Xavier one type of text that is called the elegies. In Portuguese, elegias. What is an elegy? Elegy is a text of exaltation of the death of someone, and death is raised as the maximum point of the text. It is aimed, in general, to matters more related to sadness, repentance, and melancholy, and also can inspire hope in the ones that read and see those kind of works. And also Chico Xavier wrote elegies, as we can see in the next chapter, in the next slide. All of those books can be classified as elegies because they talk about the pain of death of someone related to us, or to the ones that the messages were sent from beyond. Of course, the first book that we can talk about it is Letters from a Dead Woman, Cartas de uma Morta, which was written by Chico Xavier's mother herself, Dona Maria de São João de Deus. Dona Maria de São João de Deus was Chico Xavier's mother that passed away when Chico Xavier was only 5 years old, and he had a very difficult time because of her passing. At the age of 17 years old, so 12 years later, she came back from the spiritual life to write through Chico Xavier's psychography her impressions about her death and what she encountered in the other life, in the spiritual world. It's a very neat, very important book, Cartas de uma Morta, Letters from a Dead Woman, that was written in the early years of Chico Xavier's psychography, but it was only published in 1935 as Chico Xavier's second book by the LAC Editora, Livraria Allan Kardec Editora of São Paulo. Other books that can be classified as elegies is the book Voltei, I Came Back, from the spirit of Brother Jacob, Irmão Jacob, that was telling us, he was telling us about his own death, his encounter of his daughter from beyond, his encounter with Dr. Bezerra de Menezes, his trip to a colony, a spiritual colony nearby Rio de Janeiro, and what he found at the afterlife. Very nice book. I think myself that this book is dedicated to all of us spiritists. And why is that? Because he was one of the most known figures, directors of Spiritist Federation of Brazil, FEB, in Rio de Janeiro. He was a very rich and powerful man. He had a daughter that passed away in her early teens, and at that time he suffered a lot of his loss, and he knew the medium from the state of Pará, in Belém do Pará, that had the materialization mediumship, and through that medium he could talk to her daughter again. And from that time on he became an spiritist. The medium was Ana Prado from Belém do Pará, Brazil, and she had an extraordinary mediumship or materialization, and so he had to talk to his daughter after death, and after that he became a very known spiritist and devoted himself to the spiritist works. But when he passed away, the review Reformador, the review from the FEB, the Spiritist Federation of Brazil, wrote in a whole page that at that day, this man, we have lost the most perfect spiritist person alive, and so that he was the one to come back from beyond and tell us that he was not perfect and he was not enlightened, although he devoted himself to the spiritist movement, but he had not light at all. So this is a very important book to all of us that work with the spiritist movement, with the federations movement, that we must watch out, because the light is something that comes from our hearts, not from our desires. So we can classificate his book, I Came Back, or Voltei, as an elegy. Also, those books all talk about some kinds of persons that came from beyond to consolate their beloved ones. We have the books Jovens no Além, Youth on Afterlife, also the book Crianças no Além, Children from Beyond, the book Militaries from Beyond, that we ourselves published in Via de Luz Editora, Militares no Além. This book is also from the works of Chico Xavier, the psychographics of Chico Xavier, in the Gospel of Home of Dr. Rômulo Joviano, in Fazenda Modelo, in Pedro Leopoldo, between the years of 1934 and 1952. And all of the messages are from militaries from the 19th century and from the 20th century in Brazil. Very interesting book that I recommend you to know. And also, this is another very important book, Augusto Vive, August Lives, and I was a very good friend of this family. His mother was a very good friend of my great aunt Nair in São Paulo, and Dona Yolanda Cesar. Yolanda was her name, and she lost her son Augusto in the beaches of Santos, São Paulo. He was drowned there in Santos when he was only 18 years old. And of course, this gave the family a very good deal of pain. And someone told Mrs. Yolanda Cesar to go to Uberaba to seek Chico Xavier, that maybe she would receive some news from her son. And a very interesting fact is that Mrs. Yolanda Cesar and her husband went to Uberaba 67 times without receiving one single word from her son, from their son, Augusto. And this taught us a very important lesson of perseverance, of dedication, because although they didn't receive any letter, any news from their dead son, they kept going to Uberaba. They also organized, buses to people that had lost their loved ones, and they would guide them to Uberaba, and almost all of them, would receive letters from their beloved ones at beyond, and the couple didn't. So after 67 times going to Uberaba, the 68th time that Mrs. Yolanda Cesar and her husband went to Uberaba, they received the first words of their son, Augusto Cesar. And then the first book was Augusto Vive, which in English would be August Lives. And from that time on, Augusto Cesar never stopped writing through Chico Xavier. As a matter of fact, the latest message that Chico Xavier would himself psychographic in the very latest day of his life here on earth, the 29th of June 2002, was from the spirit of Augusto Cesar. And he was a very funny guy. When he passed away, he was only 18 years old, and he would talk like, not perfect Portuguese, very high Portuguese, but he would talk and write in Portuguese slangs from the Baixada Santista, the region of the Santos city in São Paulo. And Chico Xavier would tell me that he would have a very hard time to understand what Augusto was writing, and that was very funny. The first works of Chico Xavier's psychographics from the spirit of Augusto Cesar, because of that fact that Chico Xavier would not understand what he was talking about because he was using slang words. Emmanuel would have to have Chico to have the way of psychographing those messages in the way of a mechanic psychographic. So this is very interesting. Let's see if we have something else. Oh yes, we have the satires. The satires. What is a satire? Satire is a text of a ridiculous character, and may also be an indirect criticism of some fact or someone. A joke is a good example of a satire. So this is another type of a dramatic text, the satire, and also we can find this type of writings through Chico Xavier work. Let's see what books we can characterize as satires in Chico's work, please. Oh, we have the works of the spirit of Hilario Silva. As you well know, Hilario Silva was a companion of André Luiz when André Luiz started working at Nosso Lar, and has he had a very particular way of telling us the stories in a way of satire, in a joke. He had two books, very important books. A Vida Escreve in Portuguese, Life Writes in English, and also the book Almas em Desfile. In English would be Souls in Parade, and both of those books were from the spirit of Hilario Silva that wrote through Chico Xavier. And we also see those two books, the books Humorismo no Além, which is humorism in the beyond. There are small texts from different spirits, and also the work Falou e Disse, he spoke and said in English, that also are in this way of writing, the satire way of writing, the dramatic way of writing through the works of Chico Xavier. We can classify those four books in the satire way. And now we are now having the other way of writing in the dramatic genre, please, is the tragedy. The tragedy, of course, is a more serious way of writing. It represents a tragic fact and tends to provoke compassion, although also provokes terror. But in the Spiritism way, those tragedy also has a moral and ethic teaching. What books can we find in Chico Xavier works that could be related to tragedies? All those books here, we have here like 9 books. All of them talk about tragedies. Like the Somos Seis, we are 6 in English. Those 6 spirits wrote through Chico Xavier about their experiences in a fire in São Paulo. So they are talking about those tragedies, what they felt, what they encounter in the afterlife, and also we can relate it to this kind of work, the tragedy work, all those that passed away in a tragic form, like in car accidents, in motorcycle accidents, plane accidents, all kinds of accidents, and the surprise of death, and also the happiness that they gave their families, their loved ones, when they came back through Chico Xavier psychographic, to console them, to tell them that they were still alive, although in a different world, in a different spiritual life, but they were close to them, and they inspired them to do goodness, charity, to know the Spiritism doctrine, and mostly to work with charity. So we have all those books, Enxugando Lágrimas. So we have here, let's see if I have Washing Tears. Washing Tears would be the name in English of Enxugando Lágrimas. The book Notícias do Além, News from the Beyond. The book A Vida no Além, Life from Beyond, or Life in the Beyond. the book Viajores da Luz, Light Travelers, the book Reencontros in Re-Encounters in English, the books Filhos Voltando, Sons that are coming back, the book Feliz Regresso, Happy Return in English, and the book Loyalty, Lealdade. All of those books speaks about their tragic life, their tragic death, the what they suffered, mostly in accidents or in fires, and also the good work, the good word of hope and consolation they gave their families. So a very, very nice works of Chico Xavier that we can characterize as his way of console those families. And Chico was very devoted to that. We have also other subgenres of the dramatic way of writing, like children's book, for instance, other subgenres, children's books. We can see the children's books like O Caminho Oculto, the Occulty Way, Os Filhos do Grande Rei, the Sons of the Great King. This is the book from Veneranda Spirit, the Messages from the Little Dead, Mensagens do Pequeno Morto, História de Maricota, The History of Maricota, Jardim de Infância, Kindergarten, Juca Lambisca, which is a name, Juca Lambisca, Timbolão, also about a clown, Timbolão, Tintino e o Espetáculo Continua, Tintino also a clown, the spectacle continues. All of them, including this the cover that you are seeing here, O Caminho Oculto, the Occult Way. All of them are dedicated to the children, to the evangelization of the children. Very important books of Chico Xavier works. Chico Xavier devoted himself to that, to write to the children. We have also audiobooks, another type of the dramatic texts, as of course the audiobooks were recorded plays of Chico Xavier's works of the Spirit of Emmanuel and also of the Spirit of André Luiz. They were done in various houses. This one is from the Legião of Boa Vontade, the Legion of Goodwill, that performed and staged those plays and recorded them to us, and can be found in the DVDs. We have the 2000 years ago, a 2000 anos. We have 50 years later, 50 anos depois, both from the Spirit of Emmanuel, and we have Nosso Lar, Our Home, and Sexo e Destino, Sex and Destiny, from the Spirit of André Luiz. Let's see if we have something more. Of course, there are other subgenres of the dramatic genre, like the comedy, the melodrama, and the tragic comedy, and we can find once in a while in one of those books. As you can remember, Chico Xavier has, up to this date, in July 2019, after 92 years of work, remembering that he started psychographing on the 8th of July 1927. So 92 years ago, we have up to this date 525 books that already have been published in Brazil of his mediumship. Some of them are also published in other countries of the world, versed to almost 35 languages all over the world, and this is the astonishing work of Chico Xavier, of his devoted life to Spiritism with Jesus and the Spiritist doctrine. Of course, we can talk about also the movies that Chico Xavier inspired himself. We can see, for instance, the movie in Brazil that is o filme dos Espíritos, the movie from the spirits that were inspired in Allan Kardec work and Chico Xavier work. The movie Life Goes On, that was inspired in André Luiz's work E a Vida Continua, was done by our friend Oceano Vieira de Mello. Let's see, we can also have the book Bezerra de Menezes, O Diário do Espírito, Bezerra de Menezes, the Spirit Diary, that were inspired in the life of Bezerra de Menezes and also in messages that Bezerra de Menezes wrote through Chico Xavier. And we had mainly the subject of the doctor of the poor, also known as the Brazilian Kardec, Bezerra de Menezes. Also the book Chico Xavier, the movie about his life himself, was done by Global TV, and was a very, very good hit in the movies in Brazil. It had more than 4 million viewers in Brazilian theaters, and was directed by the well-known movie director Daniel Filho, and was based in the book As Vidas de Chico Xavier, The Lives of Chico Xavier, wrote by the journalist Marcel Sotomayor. And we can also, of course, we cannot forget the movie Nosso Lar, Our Home, that was done by our dear friend Wagner Assis. It was also a very good hit in the Brazilian theaters and elsewhere all over the world. It talked about the very first book of André Luiz through Chico Xavier that was published in 1944, was written in 1943, and published in 1944 by the Spiritist Federation of Brazil, FEB. The book Nosso Lar, Our Home, that were staged at the cinema as a very well-known hit of the Brazilian movies. So, as you can see, the works of Chico Xavier affected the lives of millions of Brazilians. We can say nowadays that almost 40% of all Brazilians have been related to Spiritism. Have been related to Spiritism through the works of Chico Xavier. They sympathize with the Spiritist doctrine because of the work of Chico Xavier, so that we have lots to thank to this great medium, the real representative of Jesus here on earth on the 20th century and on the beginning of the 21st century. I thank you, Chico, and I'm sure he will receive all our good prayers and thoughts towards him to thank his wonderful work and wonderful words also that were spoken by all those spirits that wrote his 525 books. And we can never forget also the works of his charity all over his 92 years of age here in Minas Gerais state, both in Pedro Leopoldo, where he was born and stayed until 1959, and afterwards in Uberaba from 1959 to 2002, where in the day of 30th of June 2002 he passed away. Thank you so much to watch our show. I hope I can see you again the next time. Have a great and good evening.